Time to stuff these and sew up the top. We will be using batting today to stuff the inside of our monster to make it have a soft, fluffy texture. It looks a lot like cotton balls that have been pulled apart, but it's called batting. You can get it from Walmart or any craft store. If you're working from home and you don't have batting, a great alternative would be cotton balls shredded up and pulled apart, or anything soft. Maybe like some extra pieces of felt that you might have, you can also stuff in there and sew it up. Or if you're running low on those materials, you can use something like newspaper or even spare paper crunched up and put inside your monster. So I'm going to give you a piece of batting, but you're going to work in pieces. So you're not going to shove the whole thing in your monster. You're going to use one little piece at a time. So once it's turned inside out, the first thing we're going to do is open it. We left the top open, and we're going to stuff our inside of our monster with a little bit of batting at the bottom. It's starting at the bottom, and we're going to make sure that we really get into those corners, okay? So take a little piece of batting, okay? It's about the size of a baseball, maybe a little bit smaller, and just stuff it inside your monster and really push down with your fingers into these corners so that your monster will have a nice rounded corner on the bottom of their body, okay? Then take another piece, do the same thing. Make sure you stuff the bottom, okay? You're constantly pushing it down, because even as you push it down into the corners, the batting will kind of move upward, so you want to constantly push it down into those corners. If your monster's a little crooked, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's meant to be silly. But we want to stuff it evenly. So we're just putting a little bit at a time, pulling it apart about the size of a baseball or a little smaller. And I kind of like to gather it up first and kind of form it into a ball first. Okay, I have a little bit left to go, so I'm going to grab some more batting. I want to get close to the top, but I want to leave a little bit room at the top so I can sew it up. So leaving a little bit of room at the top will help me so that my monster's not overstuffed, and it won't be very easy to sew the top if it's overstuffed, because the batting is going to be constantly sticking out. We are going to be using some pins to hold it in place though. I think that's good. Okay, now it is overflowing at the top, but that's okay. It's overly stuffed. That's all right. We're going to push it down a little bit, and we're going to just get to the point where you can pinch the top closed like that. Okay, so your stuffing's pretty close to the top, even if it's sticking out like that. Just push it back down and make sure you can pinch it close. And we're going to pinch it close. We're also going to be using some pins again. Remember, pins are the needles that have a little ball at the end, so we're going to use those again. And I like to use 3. Okay, so we're going to get to a point where we can pinch our monster together at the top. We want to make sure it's as even as possible. It's not going to be perfect, but as even as possible. Okay, and remember, your name is on the back, so let's pin the front. I like to start in the middle, and I like to pin these horizontally. So I put the pin in, it goes all the way through, and then I come back around the other side like that. And I want to make sure I'm going to have room to sew, because I'm going to be sewing the top. So I might have to move that pin down a little bit, because I'm not going to have room to sew, or my stitches might be too close to my pin. I might have a hard time. So move it down if you need to. So notice that we're pinning horizontally instead of vertically. I just find this is easier because it holds more fabric together at the top. And then I'm going to pin the left side. Same thing. You go through the back, and then you kind of go back a little bit to give you room to fold your felt and push it through the other side. Just be careful of the sharp pins that are sticking out here. And then we're going to do the right side. Make sure you leave room for your sewing. This one kind of is a little too close to the top, so I'm going to redo it. I think that'll be okay. You can always take your pins out and move them down if you need to. Okay, now we're going to sew up the top. Now we're going to sew up the top, so let's talk about how to thread a needle one more time. You're going to use your needle threader or your folded piece of paper. Pull that thread out, make sure it's straight so it doesn't knot up, and then tuck one end of it inside the needle threader. Close it up, pinch it together if it helps, and especially tug on one side so that you're not seeing any threads hanging through. Then push it through the eye of the needle. Pull it all the way through, and then carefully straighten out your threads so that they're even on one side. Like that. And you're going to treat it as one piece. Make sure you pull on it tight so it doesn't knot up, and we're making a double knot. First, we take the end and we make a circle. Then we push all the threads through the circle and tie a knot. Do it again. Second time you do it, go really slowly so the knots will fall in the same place. If it doesn't, keep making knots until you have 2 double knots together. When we're whip stitching, we're using the back first, so make sure you find your name, you stick your needle through the back and pull it through the front. Make sure you start all the way on the left side or the corner, close to the other stitches and close to the corner so that your batting doesn't fall out or stick out. And make sure your stitches are close together each time you sew so that your stuffing stays inside. Keep adjusting that thread at the top while it's long so that it doesn't get caught up. When you're making a whip stitch, you want to make sure your needle doesn't go through the big loop of thread. It's only going through your pieces of felt. Keep readjusting the felt if you need to so that the pieces lay evenly together or straight together. If they're not, adjust them as best you can, even if it's not perfect, before you make each stitch and make them close together. If your pins are in the way, you can always move them down because we need to keep them in our stuffed monster until we're finished. That way our felt won't move around. We've already stuffed it and it's keeping our felt in place so that it's not sticking out and we're not getting our needle through the batting on the inside. You're going to keep sewing until your thread is a little bit longer than your finger. If you sew and it's shorter than your finger, you're not going to have room to do that airplane trick and tie a double knot. And you'll have to cut that thread off, take it all out, and start all over. So please be watching and constantly checking that it's not too long. You can go all the way to the end. If you need another piece, you can thread another piece through your needle and keep working until you're ready to tie it off. All right, when you get to the part where it's a little bit longer than your finger, let's review that airplane trick. I think I can go 1 or 2 more, and then I'm going to find the previous stitch. And I'm going to pierce my needle through that previous stitch or the stitch right before. Be patient with yourself. This step is tough. Once you pierce it through, take off like an airplane, but realize that your airplane forgot some passengers. Fix that loop first, turn around and go back through the loop and tie it to a knot. You're going to make a double knot, so we're going to do that again. Previous stitch, take off like an airplane, but realize you forgot some passengers. Turn around and go through the loop and pull it through to make a double knot. Then you're going to cut off that where the knot is, but not right on the knot, but a couple of centimeters away from it. Throw that little piece of thread away and then put your needle on the magnetized tray. And we're done with this step. Now we have a nice fluffy monster. We're going to carefully take our pins out one at a time and put them on the magnetized tray too. And now we're going to work on the features of the face so that our monster can be complete. I just love how these are coming out. They're so soft and fluffy and they're looking great.